Today is Friday, June 20th. We'll tell you about President Trump's new deadline over whether to attack Iran. Also, damage from a hurricane in Mexico, ahead of another dangerous weather threat headed for most Americans this weekend. Plus, who President Trump is calling one of the dumbest people in government. What to know about a kid's medicine recall, and how people are celebrating a classic movie and the summer solstice today. Those stories and more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Trump has now set a 2-week deadline to decide if the U.S. will attack Iran. He says he wants to wait and see if the conflict between Israel and Iran can be sorted out with diplomacy first. The president also will be watching to see if Iran will still have any pathways to a nuclear weapon after all of this fighting, or if the strikes might convince Iran to agree to a nuclear deal. But if Trump still sees Iran as a threat to American interests, he won't hesitate to get involved. Meanwhile, the conflict between Iran and Israel has entered its 7th day. This morning, Israel launched another wave of strikes against sites in parts of Iran far from the capital, meaning Israel seems to be widening its targets. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened Iran's supreme leader, saying the Ayatollah cannot be allowed to continue to exist. On the other side, a major hospital in Israel's south sustained extensive damage after getting hit by several Iranian missiles yesterday. Other residential areas in Israel are still getting hit this morning by attacks that have been able to make it through Israel's Iron Dome. And at this point, both sides are rejecting all calls to surrender. But there's hope of a solution coming, since Reuters reports the U.S. has already held direct talks with Iran this week. And today, European countries are holding their own talks with Iranian representatives. Central banks in Switzerland, Sweden, and Norway all cut their interest rates this week. That's because they're actually worried inflation could be too low, putting a damper on economic growth. Though here in the U.S., the Federal Reserve is still worried about inflation staying uncomfortably high. And there's still uncertainty since President Trump's next tariff deadline is coming up next month. So this week, the Fed decided once again to leave interest rates right where they are, between 4.25% and 4.5%. Well, President Trump is not happy about that, writing on Truth Social that the Fed chairman Jerome Powell is, quote, truly one of the dumbest and most destructive people in government. And then he called for the Fed to make the equivalent of 10 rate cuts all at once. Powell has not responded to the president's criticism. Instead, he says he's just focused on keeping prices stable and job growth high. Granted, Fed members do say they expect to make 2 more incremental cuts by the end of the year. President Trump is allowed to keep using the National Guard in California for now. Yesterday, a federal appeals court sided with the president, despite a lower court ruling that said Trump had to give control back to Governor Gavin Newsom. Ultimately, this means the president can still command the troops there, at least while this case continues to play out in court. Separately, the Homeland Security Department has tightened the rules on members of Congress visiting Immigration and Customs Enforcement facilities. Under the new protocol, members of Congress have to give at least 72 hours notice of any visit to an ICE facility, and they need to provide a list of anyone they want to speak with ahead of time, along with signed paperwork from the detainee. It also blocks any photography or videography within the facilities. And even if all the rules are followed, ICE can still deny a request or cancel or reschedule a visit. This comes after confrontations between Democratic officials and federal agents at detention centers across the country. Some Dems, though, are criticizing these new rules, saying it's part of their job to conduct oversight, and that if ICE has nothing to hide, their facilities should be open. So far, no further comment from the Trump administration. Hurricane Eric made landfall in southern Mexico as a dangerous Category 3 storm. This is the first time a major hurricane has hit Mexico before July. But just a few hours later, Eric was downgraded to a Category 1. Rain was a big issue, causing some flash flooding, landslides, downed power lines, blocked highways, and evacuations. Thankfully, no reports of anyone dying, but the threat is not over just yet. And in some parts of Mexico, nearly 16 inches of rain could fall through the end of the week. Meanwhile, in the U.S., a heat wave could end up smashing dozens of records this weekend. Almost everyone who lives east of the Rockies will see temperatures in the 90s or higher. A few cities that very rarely see temps approach 100 could hit those triple digits, like Denver, New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Humidity levels will also reach far beyond what's normal for this time of year, and the hot, humid conditions are expected to last into next week. Summer, by all measures, has now officially begun. The summer solstice is happening today at 10:42 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the moment when the Earth's tilt brings the North Pole closest to the sun, so the northernmost parts of the Arctic get 24 hours of daylight. The continental U.S. will get 14 to 16 hours of daylight, which is why many people call it the longest day of the year. Then, starting tomorrow, the days will slowly start to shorten until the winter solstice in December, when we'll get the longest period of darkness. For now, though, it's a good time to celebrate sunshine. People around the world will mark the occasion with music and other festivities. The most famous celebration is in England, where hundreds of people travel to witness the sun align with the ancient Stonehenge site. Here in the U.S., thousands of people will gather in New York City's iconic Times Square to do some yoga, and Seattle will stage a parade tomorrow. Plus, a lot of restaurants and grocery stores are rolling out special summer solstice freebies and deals. More news for you still ahead. But first, a quick break to thank our sponsor, Skylight. Apparently, planning and coordinating family schedules and household tasks, aka the mental load, takes up a reported 63% of parents' brain space on an average day. And as you probably already know, it can be exhausting. But thankfully, the Skylight calendar can help. It's a beautifully designed, Wi-Fi connected, all-in-one smart calendar touchscreen display that syncs with your other calendars and helps your entire family stay on the same page for events, chores, grocery lists, and more. There are so many ways to use it, from a routine list that my little one can check off and have so much fun with that, to shared family to-do lists and calendars. But one of my personal favorite things is how much easier it is to save recipes and meal plan. I literally can copy and paste a URL for a recipe or take a picture of one in a cookbook, for example, and have that instantly upload to my meal options, where I can then add it to my meal plan calendar and reference it for cooking. It's just amazing. Same thing goes with events, for example. Import a PDF, an email, or a photo, and it'll go right into our shared calendar as a family, saving us so much time and energy. We've enjoyed it so much, we've already gifted my brother's family with one as well, and they are so excited. Plus, right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars, that's the one I have, by going to skylightcal.com/newsworthy. Go to skylightcal.com/newsworthy to get $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. It was another setback for the most powerful rocket ever built. The SpaceX Starship rocket exploded into a huge fireball during ground testing this week. Several live streams of Starbase caught the explosion on camera, and they all showed a huge fireball filling the screen. But SpaceX CEO Elon Musk made light of it on X, writing, quote, "just a scratch." The company said the problem was a major anomaly. Thankfully, no one was reported injured, and the company says there are not any hazards to people who live near the launch site. This isn't the first time a Starship rocket has exploded, but NASA is planning to eventually use a version of it to take astronauts to the surface of the moon and one day Mars. So to get to that point, SpaceX founder Elon Musk says more test launches are coming up. A children's medicine is being recalled because it could actually give kids food poisoning. It's a honey cough syrup from the brand Little Remedies. The bottles were distributed all around the country over the last few years, and now there's concerns they could be contaminated with a bacteria that can cause two types of foodborne illnesses. Most people who get sick only suffer with stomach virus-like symptoms in the short term, but exposure in high levels can be even more serious. So if you have any at home, you're asked to throw it away immediately, and the product's manufacturer is offering refunds. We have more information about the recall posted in today's episode notes. As ChatGPT gets smarter, is the opposite happening to human brains? That was the question MIT researchers had when they started a new study. They divided students into 3 different groups and asked them to write SAT essays using either ChatGPT, Google's search engine, or nothing at all. Then they recorded each person's brain activity. Well, they found that ChatGPT users had the lowest engagement in every part of the brain, like the parts responsible for language comprehension, creativity, and memory. Then, over the course of several months, the people who used ChatGPT put much less effort into essays than they did at the beginning of the study. Plus, ChatGPT users retained less information from the essays written. On the flip side, the group that was only allowed to rely on their own brain power showed the highest amount of brain activity, and the group that used Google Search actually had pretty active brains as well. So the study suggests using artificial intelligence could harm overall learning, especially for young users. And the lead author says there needs to be more education on how best to use AI tools. Of course, other studies have found positives, like the one that recently suggested AI could improve worker productivity. And more studies into AI are still developing. On this day 50 years ago, a summer blockbuster ignited a cultural obsession, and people everywhere decided they were afraid of sharks. We're, of course, talking about Jaws. And today, on the 50th anniversary, fans are celebrating. NBC is airing a 3-hour telecast of the movie featuring a special introduction from director Steven Spielberg. That's tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. But if you miss it, the movie will be available to stream on Peacock until July 14th, as well as a new documentary about making the film. Then on Labor Day weekend, the original Jaws is coming back into theaters everywhere. Other special screenings are happening around the country. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, thanks to our sponsor, Fatty 15. I'm feeling great about making C15 from Fatty 15 part of my daily routine because I want to do everything I can to age better. Their reports say C15 is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years and that it supports long-term health and wellness. The company explains that when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster, and that as many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels and cellular fragility syndrome. Well, Fatty 15 is clinically proven to raise C15 levels, resulting in lower cholesterol levels, healthier liver function, improved gut microbiome health, and improved red blood cell health within 3 weeks. It's said to have 3 times more cellular benefits than omega-3 or fish oil, which is a relief because Fatty 15 has no flavor or aftertaste. In fact, it's the easiest pill I've ever had to take, and it comes in this gorgeous reusable bottle with refills that ship right to my door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier, longer. And you can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/newsworthy and using code newsworthy at checkout. Again, get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/newsworthy and using code newsworthy at checkout. Now back to Feel Good Friday. Today, we're talking about a retired software designer who has now dedicated himself to cleaning up tires. Yep, while other retirees take up golf or birding, John Merriman takes on trash while encountering plenty of bugs, snakes, rodents, and poison ivy along the way. His mission started in 2008 when he came across a polluted creek behind his office. Since then, Merriman has removed more than 15,000 tires from illegal dumps around the U.S., including creeks, ravines, and roadside ditches. His work is actually tackling a national problem, since discarded tires are not only an eyesore, but they can also leach toxic chemicals and spark fires that release dangerous pollutants. The Federal Highway Administration estimates that Americans discard 280 million tires every year. And over the years, the Highway Administration estimates that 2 to 3 billion have accumulated in legal stockpiles and illegal dumps. But Merriman keeps chipping away, believing that every bit collected means less pollution. He works where he lives in Maryland, but also travels around the country just to pick up tires. Even when he's on vacation, he finds time for a tire cleanup. Now Merriman's goal is to clean up trash in every county in America. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow with a special edition Saturday episode about the possible benefits and risks of nuclear power, just as the Trump administration plans to go all in. Then join us again Monday for your next Daily News Roundup. For now, thanks so much again for listening and have a great weekend.